Sorry about that, babe.
What's up guys, it's Cody aka the Bear here, Bits and Glory, and today I'm going to bring you a bit of a different video. This is going to be my Shining Force 1 character tier list. So what this is basically ranking all the Force members that you could potentially get in the first Shining Force, and ranking them from a S to D tier. S being the best, D being the worst. My list is really keeping into consideration a certain criteria, which I will lay out in both this video and my description. My criteria might not meet your criteria. In saying that, if you disagree with any of the placements of my characters, feel free to let me know in the comments. Just don't get toxic, please. There's no need for it. I've seen some videos where people just get really angry for some reason, and I don't understand why. But anyways, also again, keep in mind this is my criteria. Alright, I'm just gonna tell you right now, a little spoiler alert before we get into it. We're not promoting everybody at level 20 here. So certain characters might be fucking beast after a level 20 promotion, but we're not doing that in this tier list. This is more of a casual playthrough style of tier list, so keep in mind my criteria before commenting. So let's get into the criteria and then let's get into the actual tier list. Alright, so first, this is based off of a level 10 to 15 promotion scale. Level 10, as you know, is the minimum for promotion in Shining Force 1. 15 is the midway point with, 20 being the... I'm pretty sure 20 is the max, or at the very least, it's the ideal promotion level. As you could tell, I haven't really done many level 20 promotions throughout the course of my life. And for reference, I've probably beaten Shining Force, I don't know, somewhere between 10 to 15 times over the course of my life. It's one of my favorite games. Obviously, I'm not a speedrunner, I'm not a challenge runner. I play more games than just Shining Force, so it's not like... Even though it is one of my favorites, it's not like the be-all end-all. I keep going back to it all the time, but if there was be-all end-all game for me, it would be Dark Souls. That's the one that I know inside and out. But anyway, this is based off of a level 10 to 15 promotion, not 20. Number 2 kind of lends itself into number 1. This is minimal grinding. This is a casual playthrough style. I don't know, guys. I can't put an exact number or time frame on it, but very minimal grinding, if any at all. Maybe an extra battle or two here and there, aggress and then go do it again, but this is not insane grinding. We're not taking a lot of time on each battle, so it kind of lends itself 1 and 2, obviously. Number 3, we are keeping in mind early, mid, and end game in this tier list. So because a character might be good at the beginning of the game, but not so much in the middle or the end, I'm not going to destroy them in my rankings because you can't have them on your end game force. I am going to keep in mind the help that they gave you early. A perfect character that pops out to me is Hans. Early in the game, Hans is very good in the first few battles. Obviously his stat growth kind of peters out a little bit as you go, but early in the game, Hans is a very good character for at least maybe like chapter 1-ish into chapter 2, a little bit even. So I'm going to keep that in mind with the rankings. 4, the time in which you get your party member is considered. There are many Force members that you get late in the game, chapter 6 and beyond, and this is going to be considered as we make this list. It's funny because you'd think that would kind of be a negative thing, but mini spoiler, someone that you get late is actually the number 1 character on my tier list, based off of my criteria again. So, but there are some people that you get later in the game that need a lot of work, and because of that, they're probably going to be pretty low on my list. And 5, the last thing, rings and upgrades are considered. Power ring, running pimento, power potion, defense potion, these things are considered in this ranking. I'm not going to say it probably for every fucking character, but just keep in mind, you are able to give them these rings. So, we're rolling on a clean slate with every character, really. However, some of the characters, I'm probably just going to outright say, like, I would not give them rings or not give them upgrades, and this is why they're there. But anyway, enough criteria. Let's get into what you're all here for, and that's the tier list itself. We're going to start from left to right, top row to bottom, starting from max and ending off with Torasu. I'm not going to try to spend too much time here because I don't want this to be like a fucking 3-hour-long video or something like that, so we'll just get going. And we're going to start things off with Max. And for me, Max, excuse me, I said Axe because he's A tier. Max is a very solid A tier character for me. Obviously, he's your main character. I'm going to kind of throw a little bit of tidbits in here. I have some website shit up off to the side. kind of supplement my my thoughts here. Max is the main character of Shining Force. He's the hero. He's the swordsman. As he goes, you go. If he dies, obviously you lose the battle. So he's definitely a character that you're gonna want to spend a little bit more time on. Again, we're not really like overly grinding here, but you also don't want Max to be lagging behind. I find in my older age that I tend to play a little bit more carefully than I was when I was younger. I don't know why. So I typically find myself to have Max a little bit under leveled as opposed to what he used to be in my earlier age. But he is a good character to invest a little bit of stuff into. If you want to give him some rings or some power, potion upgrade type things, feel free. Obviously, if he's a complete fucking tank for you, then all the better, because he technically is the most important party member. He's pretty consistently solid throughout the game. His stat growth appears to be a little bit better when he's base class. After promotion, he kind of just has like a normal stat growth, at least to me. I don't know if there's completely designated numbers throughout this. This is just based off of my observations throughout my life. Early game, he tends to, his attack and defense, I feel like, go up a little bit more exponentially before he's promoted. Afterwards, it's kind of like, oh, just like a pretty steady and natural progression promotion, excuse me. The big thing for Max is, again, I think you could swap the swords, but I typically always give him the Sword of Light and the Chaos Breaker. And when you give those things to Max, he becomes a really good character, because typically, like I said, you spent a little bit more time on him. His attack and defense should already be pretty high. You give him those weapons, the attack goes up pretty well, but then he also gains the ability to use magic. The Sword of Light, unfortunately, is way better than the Chaos Breaker because it knows Bolt 2? I can't remember the exact spell off the top of my head, but basically you go from Bolt to Freeze, and the Bolt is just way better, and you don't get the Sword of Light for that long. The Chaos Breaker in itself is a better weapon, but I don't like the Freeze as much as the Bolt. But either way, I mean, you can't go wrong with Max. He's one of the best characters in the game, so let's just leave it at that. Alright, next we have Mei, who is, for me, on the B tier. Let's bring up Mei real quick. So, a couple things to note about Mei. Mei, I find to be a very viable option throughout the entirety of the game. You get her pretty early. She's a little weak at the beginning. I would say more so with attack. But she's definitely one of the better defense centaurs in this game. I find that typically she ends up being very tanky for me. She has a bit of a odd stat curve. Her defense gets really high really fast and then kind of peters off a little bit on her base class, of course. After promotion though, it's more steady for both attack and defense, and her HP goes up a little bit more after promotion. She's just really kind of a solid character. I don't really use many like upgrades on her. Occasionally I might throw a ring her way. It depends how I'm kind of going with my force. Sometimes I'd give her the power ring. I definitely wouldn't give her any mobility type of things. You might pop a potion on her here and there, but I wouldn't pop a defense potion because, like I said, typically she's one of the better defense centaurs in the game. So she's just a solid character. She's a good B tier character for me. I have her on my endgame party more often than not. At the very least, you obviously have the lore factor with her because she's Lord Varios' daughter, right? So Mei, solid B. Alright, next we are going with another early game member here. We're going with Lowe. So, Lowe for me is kicking off the C tier. Now, I'll just be upfront and honest when I say, not a huge fan of the healers in Shining Force. The healers are exponentially better characters in Shining Force 2 than they are in Shining Force 1. Lowe is the first one that you get. He's, I guess to me, honestly, he's kind of the definition of okay. Because you get him so early, you can find yourself spending some more time on him. He's another character that I wouldn't give any rings or any kind of like upgrades to him. I mean, he's a healer, you know what I mean? You're probably not going to be attacking much with him. He's going to get the majority of his experience and levels from casting spells. He's just not great. He's kind of like outclassed. He's got a pretty typical stat curve. I think he's actually average across the board from what I see, other than his MP is pretty high in his base class, but then after promotion, he's pretty much just steady Eddie. The thing with him is he doesn't learn like the best spells. He could learn heal 1 through 4. Heal 4 is learned at level 22. He learns slow 1 and 2, quick 1 and 2, and detox 1. He's a C. He is just like your typical, like, okay, he's alright, you know. If you have him on your endgame roster, I could see it. But if you don't, I think there are some better options than him. And we'll get to that later. Next, we have another C tier, and that'll be Ken. Ken I do have in front of Lowe. I'm not gonna... Pretty soon some of these tiers are gonna get really like bamboozled, so I'm not gonna be like, oh, he's in front of this guy, and you'll just see it visually, but I do think he's better than Lowe. So I'm actually rating Ken a little bit higher than I thought I would. Now, the thing with Ken... Alright, so everybody knows that's played this game. Ken's defense fucking sucks. It's terrible. That's the main reason why Ken isn't higher. His defense is terrible. But to offset that, he typically does get a little bit higher HP, especially towards the beginning in his base class. To me, Mei is better, because after a few levels, Mei's defense goes up. Yes, does she have as much HP as Ken? Absolutely not. But Ken is just kind of meh. After promotion, I don't know, his attack and defense are kind of eh. His HP continues to build. He's basically like your HP sink centaur. Now, the reason that I don't have him a little bit lower on this list, granted you haven't seen the whole thing yet, is because he is really, really valuable in the early game, and can even be valuable for you in the mid game. End game though, meh. I've seen some people with Ken on their final roster. I guess if you give him some rings or maybe some defense potion, if you spend a little bit of time on him, not in the grinding aspect, but in the oh, I'm gonna buff him aspect, you might be able to move him towards the top of the C list. Maybe you can convince me on a good day that he's on the very bottom of my B list, but I usually don't spend much time on Ken. He serves his purpose. He's much like another character that I mentioned earlier that we're gonna get to soon. Early mid game, he's very important, but nah, Ken just kind of flounders a little bit. There are better centaur options. Okay, so next we're gonna get to Luke, or Lug. Also, I apologize if you guys hear stomping. My fucking cats are stupid. They don't do shit all day, and then as soon as I start recording something, they literally take dumps and they're jumping on stuff and knocking stuff over. Hopefully you guys aren't hearing that. Just had to get that out of the way. Anyway, Luke. Luke is gonna be in front of Mei. So, Luke is another early game character, obviously, you get him at the very beginning. Dwarf warrior, promotes into a gladiator. So there's 2 dwarf warriors in this game, Luke and Gort. I find that overall Luke is stronger than Gort. So if you're looking for an attack dwarf, he is your best option in the game. He's a very good character. In fact, he has... So according to the stat growth charts, his attack and defense are pretty much level and good the entire way, and his HP has the higher curve out of the categories. Obviously, no MP for him. But I do find that his attack is higher than Gort's. Gort ends up... I don't want to get too much into Gort. Gort's more of a defensive guy. Luke is more of an offensive guy. And I find that sometimes I take for granted characters like Luke, who are really solid, and then I'll be like, I don't really need to level them up that much. But with Luke, he has good stat progression. After promotion, he's good. You get him early. He's viable in the early, mid, and end game. He's able to wield some good items, like especially if you end up getting the heat axe and stuff like that. In the General Elliot battle, right? If you get 2 heat axes, one for Gort and Luke, obviously that's ideal, but if you give the heat axe to Luke, you know, at that point of the game, you know, mid-game-ish, His attack is very high, and then it gives him the ability to cast Blaze too, which is really good. I always have Luke on my endgame. I don't think I've had a playthrough where Luke isn't on my endgame roster. There are better characters than him though, which is why, again, on a good day, maybe Luke could be in the A tier, maybe put a little bit more TLC into him, but to me, he's like the epitome of a solid B. He's at the top of the B basically for me. He's a good character. You could do a lot worse than him. Next, we're gonna get into Tao or Tao. I never really figured out how to pronounce that. Is it Tao or Tao? I'm just gonna roll with Tao. Whatever, doesn't matter. Anyway, first S tier. All right, so this is this might be a little controversial even based off of my rankings. But then again, the more I think about it, not really, because the person that I'm putting Tao in front of typically really outshines her if you do the level 20 promotion, which we're not doing. So anyway, again, a beginning force member. This character is good in the early, middle, and end game. She is... I honestly almost put her number 1. She is that good. And again, she is so fucking good at the beginning of the game, and then also really good in the middle of the game. If she does lag behind slightly, it might be the end game, again, compared to some other spellcasters and stuff like that. But she's like so fucking good through the first like 5 or 6 chapters that to me, she's straight up S tier. You know, obviously, is she a viable attacker? No. Her stat growth is pretty good. It's consistent for HP, attack, and defense. Her MP goes up pretty good, base class. After promotion, her HP kind of peters off, but everything else continues to go up pretty steady. And obviously, the main reason that you're going to use her is she knows Blaze. Blaze 1 and 2 are learned at level, well, she already knows Blaze 1. Blaze 2 is learned at level 4. Blaze 3 is at 12, and Blaze 4 is learned at level 20. And obviously, Blaze 4 is a very good fucking spell. She also knows Sleep, Dispel, and Boost. She learns Boost at level 27, so that's actually pretty late, because if you're working off of this, if you promote her at level 10, she's not going to learn that until level 17 promoted. You might legitimately not even ever learn Boost with her based off of this tier ranking criteria that I got. But, I mean, there's really not much to say. She's fucking really good, dude. Like, again, another character that I don't think I've ever not had on my endgame. She's great. So next we're gonna go to the other dwarf. We're gonna go with Gort. And I'm just verifying where Gort is. Oh yes, that's right. Gort is actually directly behind Luke on my tier list. So in my later years, I've babied Gort a little bit more. If I only get one heat axe, I give it to Gort. If I'm feeling risky enough, you know, I'll give Gort the power ring to kind of, you know, bring him up, because typically, like I said, his defense is better than Luke's. Let's bring up Gort real quick. So for his stat promotion, or excuse me, I keep fucking up the words, guys, I'm sorry. His stat progression, base class, HP is about normal, attack's about normal, defense is on a very high curve, and then after promotion, he's pretty steady. So you could really bolster his defense. His defense is always going to be better than Luke's. The only way that Luke's defense is going to be better is if you give him defense potions. You know, you really spend a lot of time leveling him up and such. But Gort, I like guys with good defense. Yes, they're going to be more vulnerable to the magic enemies later in the game. But as far as physical attacks, Gort is just going to eat that shit. And then if you give him a little bit of extra care, power potion, heat axe, power ring, combination of those, his attack is up there, and he again is a candidate for a endgame force member. You get him very early. You can get him in the first chapter. I think, is it after the second battle? You can get Gort, right? Because he's waiting at the inn in Guardiana, and then you go obviously do the first battle, and then the second one's coming back. Yeah, you can get him after the second battle. So he's basically a beginning force member. I kind of lump Gort and Gong in with beginning force members because you just get them so early. He's just another great character. Him, Luke and Gort, if you have them on your endgame team, I will not argue with you. I mean, they're fucking good. He's good middle. Obviously, he's good beginning, he's good mid-game and endgame. So. Next, we're going to go with Hans, who I kind of already spoiled it a little bit. He's on my C tier. Now, I'm going to get this out of the way. Based off of my criteria, archers are fucking terrible. They just are. My main gripe with Hans is his stat growth is fucking awful. It's just terrible. He has like the weird inverted stat growth base class, right? His HP doesn't really go up that well. His attack doesn't really go up that well. His defense doesn't really go up that well. In fact, I find that it's typically his speed. After promotion, which, to be completely honest with you guys, haven't really used him much after promotion. For the most part, he's been a, oh, I'm gonna promote him just to promote him kind of guy. After promotion, HP stays about the same. Attack and defense start leveling off a little bit, meaning they get better. They turn into a more level progression, which is good for him. Hans's main use is really the beginning of the game. Which is why I have him a little bit higher than I thought I would. I find Hans, in general, he sucks. But in no way, shape, or form should Hans be on your endgame. Unless you just really, really want an archer and some of the other archers don't do it for you. In fact, I think on my last playthrough that I did on YouTube, I did not even have an archer, or a sniper, or whatever the fuck they are, on my endgame. The reason why Hans is a little bit higher is, especially over another archer that will appear soon, is Hans serves a great purpose in the beginning of the game. Hans is one of the better beginning of the game characters, simply because he has the range. He's not terrible, because at this point the other characters are not super duper strong. The enemies that you face are not super duper strong, so the fact that Hans can attack from range gives him a lot of worth. But you'll quickly find out, even if you were not watching stuff like this, even if you're not a Shining Force veteran, you'll be like, wow, each time Hans levels up, it's like speed goes up by 2, and that's it. It's like, oh, okay, dude, like your attack and your defense is never going up apparently. So eventually he becomes a very weak character in every sense of the word. So that's why he's on my C list, and he's at the bottom of the C list. But the actual bottom of my C list, Gong. Now, Gong is technically a secret character. You could miss Gong in this game. He's actually a half giant, which is interesting. I didn't realize that. He's a monk, and when he's promoted, he turns into a master monk. He's a combination of a fighter and a healer. By the way, the monk thing that he's got going on is greatly outclassed in Shining Force 2 and Shining Force CD. The monks and master monks in those games are so much better. Gong is another character that requires a bit of TLC. His attack is not great. Obviously, he can't wield weapons. And overall, his spells are not great either. You could argue that he's better than Lowe, in a sense, because Gong does learn all 4 levels of heal, and he also learns aura, but it's level 30. So again, keeping in mind my tier criteria, level 30, even if you promote Gong at level 15, that's a lot of leveling to go to get aura, but he can learn aura. Now, if you want to give him all this TLC, sure, but I typically don't do it. When I was younger, my neighbor Kyle and I, which is how I got into Shining Force, Kyle and I played a lot and had an emulator and stuff before I got my cartridge. We liked Gong for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe we just liked his portrait. Maybe we thought he was cool because he was punching things with his bare hands, but not the best. His stat progression, fairly normal at base class. His defense is definitely probably the highest thing that goes up out of HP, MP, and attack. After promotion, that's when he starts taking off a little bit, so to speak, in terms of a healer, magic user. His MP does start going up. Obviously, you know, he learns aura. But based off of my criteria, you're probably not going to spend that much time on Gong. You have more viable attackers. If you wanted to make Gong a more viable attacker, you'd obviously have to put in some, you know, put in some work. You'd have to give him a power ring, but there's probably better characters for that. You'd have to give him some power potions, again, better characters for that. And for that reason, Gong is at the bottom of my C tier. And now we're gonna get into my favorite healer, and that is Khris, who is actually right behind Mei on my list. So you get Khris pretty early as well. She, to me, is better than Lowe and better than Gong. She's a healer, and after promotion turns into a Viker. Sorry about that. Allergies are killing me, guys. Alright, there we go. So, her base class stat progression is pretty normal. It's funny though, because her base class kind of rivals Gong's after promotion, which goes to show you why she's higher than Gong. Her MP goes up higher than everything else. Her attack, defense, and HP are pretty normal. After promotion, kind of about the same. A little bit of a wavy defense curve. But I find her to be pretty good. So here's the issue with her. When you get her, she's probably... The only grinding I really do is at the very beginning of the game, like the very beginning. So her level will lag a little bit behind, but she either comes equipped with a power staff or you can get it for her right away. It's escaping me right now which is which, but that actually gives her a pretty decent attack for early game, which will allow you to, you know, organically level her up a little bit quicker if you want to. As far as spells go, she learns heal 1 through 4. Nose level 1, level 2 is level 5, level 3 heal is learned at level 16, and level 4 heal is learned at level 21. She also knows slow. She learns quick at level 12, slow is at level 8, excuse me, and she learns aura 1 and 2. So aura 1 and 2, obviously Lowe and Gong don't know aura 2. She learns it at level 28 though, so again, based off of this criteria, you may or may not get there, but you probably should get aura level 1. It's only level 20, so even if you promote her at level 10, I typically try to promote her at level 12, 13 or something like that, so then you have a few more levels to go before she learns aura. To me, it's pretty apparent that she is the better healer of Lowe and Gong. In this game, I don't think you need too many healers. You can get away with healing items. Yeah, and I don't know, Khris is my preferred healer of choice, to be honest with you, in this game. So, that's a spoiler, Khris is going to be my highest ranked healer. Next, this might be my first controversial thing, potentially. But again, based off of my criteria, I don't think it's that controversial. And that is, I have Anri, S tier. She is S tier. Some people have her as the best character in the game. Again, based off of my criteria, I don't think so. But she is one of the best characters in the game. I used to use her a lot as a kid, and then as I got older, I started kind of phasing her out for some reason, probably for my reasons why I have her less than Teo. But in my most recent playthrough, I did kind of level her up a little bit more, and I get it. She's a fucking beast. If you spend a lot of time on her, I could definitely see why you'd have her as number 1 or number 2 in the game. As far as her progression of stats, fairly standard across the board for a mage. MP goes up, the other stuff stays fairly similar. After promotion, fairly consistent across the board. Her defense and attack start going up a lot though, which is interesting. I mean, you're not really going to be using that. Obviously the reason why she's up this high is, well, she knows Blaze early on. She knows it inherently. Blaze 2 she learns at level 8. She knows Muddle at level 10. And this is the reason why some people have her as the highest. Freeze is learned at level 5. Freeze 2 is learned at level 13. Freeze 3 is learned at level 16. And Freeze 4 is learned at level 23. Which for mages is very attainable because you're typically always killing enemies in every fucking battle with them. And Freeze 4 is beastly. Freeze 4, I don't know the exact numbers, but just based off of the eye test, Freeze 4 is better than Blaze 4. And that's the main reason why she's so good. But she also learns Bolt. So yes, she knows low level Blaze, all of Freeze, and she knows Bolt 1 and 2. Now, granted, Bolt 1 is level 19 and Bolt 2 is level 29. Based off of my criteria, you probably aren't gonna reach Bolt 2, but it is worth noting. Anri's a great character. She's also a heavy lore character. She's a big part of Shining Force CD. Her dad is King Guardiana, right? So she's got a lot of cool things for you. She's a really good character. She's got the lore. You know, obviously the mages are OP as hell in this game, so she's a great early, mid, and end game Force member, and she could technically be the best Force member, and I wouldn't argue super hard if you say that she is. So I'll leave it at that. As far as items and rings and stuff, maybe give her the Bread of Life or something like that, but other than that, I don't really give her much because she doesn't really need it. You gotta baby the mages a little bit, don't put them in harm's way, and you're good. Next, we have Amon, who is on my C tier in front of Ken. So, I want to get this out of the way as we're about to get into the flyers. When I was a kid, I thought they were fucking great. I love their design. I think they look really cool. I love the fact that they had great movement. I quickly learned that they are very weak and need to be babied a little bit. So throughout the course of my playthroughs, I kind of phased them all out. It was a mistake. On future playthroughs, I actually didn't really, I'll be honest with you guys, I didn't learn the Church of the Flyers until recently. I realized how good they can be. Yes, you have to baby them though. Amon, I think that's a she, right? I think Amon's the girl. Let me just bring her up here. Yeah, it's a she. So you encounter her at Shade Abbey, so it's still pretty early into the game. She is not as strong as Balbaroy. Her stat growth is, it says that it's steady for HP, attack, and defense, and I guess in a sense it is, but it's weak. She starts off weak too. After promotion, it stays steady for attack and defense, but the HP takes a dip. So, not inherently having super strong attack, defense, and then the HP not really getting much better after promotion does kind of suck. The reason why Amon is so high on my list is simply because of movement. Shining Force has a lot of terrain and outside battles that take a long time, be very frustrating, slogs, really. That's one of my main criticisms about Shining Force 1, is the outdoor battles. They could take so fucking long. In Shining Force 2, they kind of fixed that issue. The outdoor battles don't take nearly as long, movements aren't affected as much, and obviously you could set things to be a little bit quicker. The battles themselves just move a little bit quicker, especially like the computer doing their turns and stuff like that. It's more like bang, bang, bang in that game, where Shining Force 1 it's kind of like bing, bing. So anyway, long story short, the movement and the fact that she could fly is paramount. I have her this high, even though I've never really used her much. Again, this is based off of like recent revelations for me. Is simply because of her movement. Now she is weaker than Balbaroy, and as such, I'll be honest with you guys, you might want to dump most of your stat raising items and rings into the flyers. Obviously not the running pimento and movement ring and stuff like that, but the power potions, defense potions, power, you know, ring, strength ring, whatever it's. If I fuck up some of the stuff, I play so many games, guys, just bear with me. The power ring, I think it is the power ring in this game. I'm also playing Shining Force CD right now, and I know some of the names have changed between all the games, but they all end up doing the same thing. Either way, you're gonna want to give Amon a boost here and there, but you will quickly see the payoff for the movement, and that's the reason why she's so high. Movement, 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 and flying is key in this game. And next, we're gonna go into Balbaroy. Now, again, based off of my criteria, this is where I have Balbaroy. Balbaroy is on my B tier. I think Balbaroy should probably be on most people's endgame forces, specifically because of the movement and the flying. Balbaroy inherently is stronger than Amon, so a lot of the shortcomings for Amon aren't really as present with Balbaroy. The stat progression curves for Balbaroy are better base class, better for HP, attack, and defense over Amon. After promotion, pretty level across the board. Now again, if you want to invest some time and effort into Balbaroy, Power Ring, various potions, probably a good idea. You can also give Balbaroy the Sword of Darkness, which is interesting. Now, I can't be for certain, but I feel like I've seen speedrunners either have the Sword of Light or the Chaos Breaker given to Balbaroy. Now, I don't know. Does anybody know? Can you equip that without a glitch, or is that a glitch? Because I'm telling you right now, I've seen people use either the Sword of Light or the Chaos Breaker, or both, with Balbaroy. And if that's the case, obviously you could probably bump Balbaroy a little bit higher on this B list, but you could use the Doom Blade, you could use the Katana in Sword of Darkness without shenanigans. Again, I can't really be for certain if you're able to equip that stuff without shenanigans, but if you are, go ahead and bump Balbaroy up. But again, movement is key, flying is key, and Balbaroy has better stats, so inherently going to be better than Amon. And even though, I do want to reiterate, kind of a weak character, can get killed pretty easily, especially when you're not promoting at level 20 like we're not in my tier list. We're not grinding a lot here. So that's why Balbaroy is towards the bottom of my B tier. With a lot of grinding, I'd probably move Balbaroy up to the top of B or maybe even A, but with my criteria, that's where I place him. Next, and this one pains me, guys. This one pains me. One of my favorite characters in the game, Arthur. Our first D tier, and he is an actual D tier. I have two characters in my old F tier ranking, which doesn't fit on here. I will put the disclaimers there when I can. Oh, Arthur. So Arthur pretty much goes against all of my criteria at this point. You do get him somewhat early, so I guess you can consider him a early, mid, and end game character. You get him in Monarena. I think it's chapter 2 at some point. So his, he sucks. Let's be real. In order to get Arthur good, he requires a lot of grinding, a lot of TLC, probably power rings, various potions. His stats start out terrible. His stat growth in his base class status is terrible. And even his, after promotion stuff, it takes a little bit to get going still. He is a constant baby. He is a project in every sense of the word. He is a labor of love. There's something about Arthur. I just like him. Typically, I always have him on my end game. I did not waste my time, so to speak, on him in my YouTube playthrough because I didn't want to do any grinding. Really, that's all it came down to. Arthur requires grinding. If you don't grind and you don't baby him and you don't give him things, he is a straight up D tier character. Now, the reason why Arthur is cool, obviously he's a centaur. He has the ability to, well, when he's promoted, he turns into a paladin. He has the ability to use some pretty good items like the halberd and, you know, the Valkyrie, stuff like that. But the part that gets him cool, especially because you have to grind him to get him good, is he learns Blaze 1, Freeze 1, and Bolt 1. Now, yeah, low level spells, right? But if you're grinding him, he learns Blaze 1 at 15, Freeze at level 20. Typically I would promote him around level 20, so he'd already know Blaze and Freeze. And he knows Bolt at level 25, so you are going to learn all these spells if you take care of him. And he ends up being a pretty decent centaur. He gets some pretty decent weapons. If you equip the power ring to him, things are good. But requires too much work, super weak, will die in one hit a lot when you get him, especially if he gets hit with magic. He's just not worth the time and effort based off of this criteria, and as such, he's a D tier. Okay, moving on. We got Diane, who finds herself towards the bottom of my C tier. Is she behind Gong? She's not, but she is behind Hans. So, Diane, I don't think this is actually stated in the game, but you could probably see from the character portraits. I think it's stated in one of the other games. I don't know if it's like one of the Gaidens or Shining Force CD or what. No, it might be Resurrection of the Dark Dragon, the Game Boy Advance remake. She's actually related to Teo, and obviously if you look at them, they both have pink hair, elf ears. They look exactly the same, essentially. I have her below Hans because, to be fair, she also kind of stinks. She's not great. Her stat progression is pretty average. She joins your force with very weak defense. At this point, you probably invested a little bit more time into Hans just by osmosis because he was on your team at the very beginning. I don't really feel the need to ever have 2 archers. I don't give her any rings. I don't give her any buffs with potions and shit. I just don't really see the point. I guess if you're not attacking anybody at all with Hans and he's not leveling up or something, maybe you can consider swapping Diane over Hans, but almost every single playthrough, Hans at this point, to me, is just a better pick than Diane. She's another character that I don't really feel like putting much TLC into. If there is an archer to put TLC into, we'll get to them later. It's not her. I don't really have much to say about her, honestly. She promotes into a bowmaster, which means she could use the assault shell and the buster shot, but you know, it's like, meh. She's just a meh character. I guess if you have like a preference, like, oh, you just don't like the way Hans looks or something like that, I guess you could make a swap for Diane, but to me, I just keep Hans longer than Diane. Diane's usually, I'll be honest with you, Diane's usually never on my force. So, but I could see some of her uses. To me, she's a little bit more useful than Gong, probably for the average goer, especially because obviously Gong's a secret character, but yeah, I don't know. She's a low C tier. She was actually bordering on D for me, but I didn't want to be too harsh. There might be some Diane fans out there, and if you guys are out there, I'm sorry. But again, no real grinding, level 10 to 15 promotion. In my criteria, I'm probably not giving her promotion items, or excuse me, not promotion items, but stat growth items. So that's just kind of where she slots. This also might be a controversial one. Yeah, Zylo. You get Zylo pretty early. Get him in Bust Oak after you get the Lunar Dew stuff. He is the tippy top of the beer list for me. So he's always on my endgame roster. A lot of people I think would probably have him in A. Some people might have him in S if they decided to go all out with him with extra grinding, and I'm going to give him the power ring and this, that, and the other. Now, I have my reasons. He's a great character. Obviously, I just said I always have him in my endgame. He's got high movement. He starts off pretty decent. He's able to level up pretty quick because of that movement. His progression, base class, kind of wavy. HP starts out pretty good, then it kind of peters off. Attack, pretty consistent high across the board. Defense, about the same. A little bit lower than the attack. After promotion, pretty steady. Now, the reason why I don't have Zylo in my A tier is I find him to be very flip of a coin. Now, he's always decent, but I feel like sometimes his stat growth sucks. Has anybody encountered that? The majority of the time, he is like a solid A tier type character for me, like especially after promotion, he'll just be beasting shit. And again, 7 movement is great. Granted, he doesn't fly, but still. I found in my most recent playthroughs, maybe it's because I'm not grinding as much anymore, sometimes he gets doo-doo stat progression. Like, his attack will kind of like lag behind. I think I actually gave him the power ring in one of my playthroughs recently, because his attack wasn't that high. And again, I just find him to be very inconsistent, which is why I put him at the top of the B. Great character. Totally should be on your endgame force roster. But there seems to be some kind of inconsistency about him, and that's why I don't have him on my A tier. If anybody could shed any light on that, feel free in the comments below. If anybody experienced the same shit that I have, where sometimes he's amazing and sometimes he's just let me know that as well. He's a very curious character. I love his design. I like how you get him. You have to do like, I mean, it's not a side quest, but it kind of is. And he's just a good character, high movement, typically has pretty good attack. You know, can't complain. For me, the tippy top of my B's here. On a good day, on a good roll of the dice for the stats, he could be in the 8 tier, but I have him in B. Okay, so next we got Adam. Let me pop him up over here on the side real quick. I have so many things open right now, it's fucking ridiculous. Now, again, based off of my criteria, I don't think this is controversial at all. He's in my D tier, but he's actually in my F tier, based off of my criteria. You get him so late in the game, okay? He's in Metafa, and he joins you after the fight against Chaos. He is another character, much like Arthur, that requires a lot of TLC and grinding. A lot. His movement is 4. Okay, so I want to get this out of the way. He's weak as fuck when you get him. And it's late in the game. And his movement's 4. That in itself buries him in my criteria. My criteria of not really grinding. He's not there in the early game or mid game. He's there only in the end game. And he sucks. Like, he's right out the gate, he sucks. And you get him in the end game. The only way to make him good, you have to give him a mobility ring, maybe a running pimento, maybe both, to increase his movement. You have to grind, otherwise he's fucking useless. Like, his stats are low, he could barely move, and you get him at the end of the game. There's really not much else to be said in regards to my criteria. His stat growth, fairly consistent across the board, average. The only thing that wavers a little bit is his HP goes up a little bit quicker and then kind of peters off a little bit, base class before promotion. But again, you get him so late in the game, he's already so weak. I don't want to keep repeating myself. He's just not worth the time with my criteria. Now, if you actually take the time, if you invest, you know, the movement stuff into him and you level him up appropriately, yeah, after promotion, he's pretty sick actually. And I've done it a few times. But yeah, he actually builds up a very high defense rating after promotion. But again, we're not going to be spending that much time. And based off of this criteria, he's a solid B. And he's actually an F on my list. To me, he's the second worst character in the game, based off of my criteria. So, anyway, moving on. We're getting down to the nitty-gritty here, guys. Thank you so much for hanging around for this tier list. I know it's a bit rambly. I'm just, you know, trying something new here. You know what I mean? Keep things fresh on the channel. So we got Alef, the mage slash wizard. And where do I have her slotted exactly? So I have her on the C, okay? And she's in front of a Hans. Oh, wait a minute. I fucked up here, guys. Sorry. Lowe is actually in the middle of Hans and Diane. Gong is here. Alef is behind Amon and Ken for me. Okay. So, you get Alef really late in the game. You get her after the Tower of the Ancients battle. Now, you could totally convince me that she's on the B tier. Her stat progression is fairly normal, as typical with most mages. MP is a little bit higher base class. Don't you get her? Isn't she already? No, she's not promoted yet, but you get her at level 15. Okay. I see. So yeah, another spellcaster. When you get her, she already knows Blaze 1 and 2. She already knows Freeze 1 and 2. She knows Bolt 1. And eventually she learns Desoul at level 26. Desoul, meh. But she ends up, this is what, okay. She learns Bolt 1, 2, 3, and 4. So she is the best Bolt caster in the game. And anybody that knows Bolt, great range, a great fucking spell, right? But again, based off of my criteria, minimal grinding, you know, she's a mage, so giving her stuff like power rings and defense potions, meh, doesn't really increase her value on my tier list with my criteria. She learns Bolt 2 at level 17, which is pretty quickly. Bolt 3 at level 22, and Bolt 4 at level 30. So it is reachable and attainable, but the fact that you get Tao and Anri so early in the game, and they're so fucking good, obviously you see on my tier, they're S tier for me. It's a bit redundant to have 3 mages. It actually might be fun in a future playthrough to roll with a 3 mage, you know, force list or whatever towards the end of the game, but I don't know. I just think that you get her so close to the end of the game, you already have 2 very viable spellcasters that, again, based off of my criteria, she fits solidly on the C. If you have her on your, you know, your end game force, I could see it. I'm not going to argue about it. Maybe if for some weird reason you decided to not use Anri, she could be very viable because with a little bit of stuff going into her, she could learn, you know, the bolt spells pretty quickly, but again, kind of a useless character to me. I've never really used her or, yeah, spoiler, Torasu. You get them at the same time, after the same battle, in the same spot of the game. It's so late, I've already invested time and effort into other people, that I think that has to be seriously considered. But Torasu is a little different. I'll get to that later. So that's where Alef sits on my list. Ooh, now we're gonna get into some good stuff. I don't know if this is gonna be controversial or not. I had Domingo, who is a secret character. You have to hatch the Domingo egg to get him. I had Domingo in my S tier. But after some further thought, I put him in my A tier. Domingo is great. I don't care what anybody says. He doesn't get promoted. I get that. He has pretty good movement, and his defense ends up getting beastly high. Like, beastly high. It says that his progression is fairly standard across the board, which in ways I guess it is. But Domingo's strong suit is his movement and his defense. It gets so high, just organically, because you're killing so many people with him, that physical attacks do almost nothing to him. Granted, the end game is pretty much dominated by magic users and weird attacks that are kind of magic, like from, like, you know, fire things from like Cerebus and shit like that. And you don't get Domingo super early. You get the egg early. You get the egg in Monarena, right? Yeah. When do you actually get Domingo, though? Oh, yeah, the incubating device in Payao. That's right. So he's not there at the beginning of the game, but he's there like mid-game and end-game. I always use Domingo. I think his character design's great. His claim to fame is freeze. He has freeze level 1 at level 1, freeze level 2 at level 4, freeze level 3 at level 13, and freeze level 4 at level 27. So you're going to get freeze 1, 2, and 3 very, very quickly, which is going to be enough to just do work with his good movement and good defense. He's basically a tank mage. Now, the thing that does suck about him is attack is fucking horrible. So when he runs out of MP, and his MP is not super duper high, he becomes a little useless. He kind of becomes a tank at that point, which still has use, but I could see he could burn out his usefulness very quickly in battle, which is actually why I have him in A and not S, even though I really wanted to put him in the S tier. He also knows Muddle and can learn Muddle level 2 at level 4. He learns De-Soul at level 17, and he learns Boost at level 20, which is also pretty good. But again, MP is a little bit limited. You're going to be casting a lot of Freeze 3 and then potentially later on Freeze 4, so the MP goes fast. But with his movement, with his spells, with his defense, the fact that he can learn Freeze 4, the fact that he can learn Boost, he's a really good character. I've seen people like shit all over him, actually. I completely disagree. I have Domingo always on my endgame roster. Yes, typically towards the end of the game, he will burn out his usefulness in the middle of a battle or towards the end of a battle. I get it. But he has a purpose. He does it well. I love him. I will fight to the death to defend the honor of my boy Domingo. So I put him on the A tier. Next we have Bleu, the dragon that you get in Dragonia, right? Oddly enough. I have Bleu on my C tier, just below Diane, and just in front of Gong. Again, Dragonia, pretty late in the game. When you get him, pretty weak. He is weak. He is a character that if you put a lot of effort into, he actually gets really good. He does, but based off of my criteria, not really worth it. He just starts off so weak. It's not worth it for his random like critical attacks and shit like that. He spews like electricity and shit as his random crit. His stat growth, fairly common, pretty average across the board, but he starts out pretty weak, and at that point of the game, I'm already having my force rolling. He just doesn't really fit in. He's a cool design. He's another rags to riches story if you spend a lot of time on him. Maybe if you give him the power ring, a couple power potions, you can sort of bump him up a little bit here. But to me, he's a C tier through and through. He's a bottom of the C tier based off of this criteria. You get him a little too late. He's a little too weak. He does require effort. I've done it before. He's a pretty good character when you put the effort in, but if you're just doing a casual playthrough with minimal grinding, he's not that great, guys. Sorry. Okay, next we're moving on to another one of my boys, Guntz, who is in my A tier, and I have him in front of Domingo, but below max. Guntz is another force member that I typically always have in my end game. Now, there are a couple things to consider here. Guntz base class has pretty standard progression levels. After promotion, his HP goes up a lot, which is really good, because Guntz's claim to fame is his defense. His defense gets super duper high. I think it's the highest in the game, actually. I think it's the high, like, if you like level up people a lot, I think it's Guntz, Adam, and then maybe Domingo as the top 3 defenses typically. The major thing going against Guntz, his movement sucks. It's 4. You have to baby Guntz. Guntz and another character who, it's funny because I just said how important movement is, right? 2 of my characters in the S and the A tier have horrible movement, but I'm using the running pimento, the mobility ring on these guys. So you're gonna want to do that right away for Guntz. Now, like I said, after promotion, Guntz's HP goes up considerably. His defense is always high, which is great. And obviously he is able to use, he's technically a, what is he, a Steam Knight and a Steam Baron, but he's able to use the same weapons as the Centaurs, the Paladins. So he has spears and lances and shit, which means a lot of the time you could attack from a space away. Which I failed to mention with May and Ken. I apologize, guys. Anytime you have a Centaur, Paladin, whatever, you know, if they have spears, they could attack from a space away, which does increase their value considerably, especially early game. But Guntz has that ability. Guntz has super high defense. He gets super high HP. You give him a little bit of movement. He's the definition of a tank. Look at him. He's literally like a fucking tank. He's in a steam suit. My most recent playthrough, Guntz was actually probably my best player because I gave him the most organic growth. And shit, I think he actually landed the killing blow for me, maybe on Dark Dragon. I can't remember. But really, the only thing that gets to him is magic. Physical attacks do next to nothing to him. Granted, again, later in the game, magic and magical attacks happen quite a bit, but if you give him a movement upgrade, Guntz is gonna wreck shit. End of story. He is A tier for me, borderline S. Great character. Alright, next we have Hanzou, who I also put on my A tier, but he's the bottom of my A tier. I have him below max Guntz and Domingo for a couple of reasons. Super cool character. He's a ninja. He doesn't promote, but there are some pretty cool things about him, and there's also a couple negatives. He has average movement, which is a bit of a negative. His stat growth, fairly consistent across the board. I would say he's definitely stronger than he is, you know, just a straight up tank. One of the major things going against him is he's a secret character. You could easily miss him. And you don't get him until the final chapter. So there is no early game or mid game usage. Now, for that reason, I actually almost put him on my B tier, but he is good enough just as is without grinding to be in the A tier. And I realized that you know, this might cause some controversy because I think you probably, you know, even based off my criteria, you can make a strong case that Zylo should definitely be in front of him. But he's just good, man. I don't know what else to say. I mean, yeah, you get him late, and he's not like amazing, but he's just like super solid. He's strong. He's just a good character, and he knows magic spells, which is interesting. Nothing insane by any means. He knows Sleep, Dispel, level 4, Dissoul at level 7, and Dissoul level 2 at level 25, and Shield at level 15. You know, realistically, are those the best spells? No. I will say this though. Every once in a while, when I've casted Dissoul with him, it actually worked. I don't know if there's something in the game, or it's just I got lucky, but I've casted Dissoul with him a few times and it has worked. So, but yeah, I don't know. I guess it's, in a way, it's a little bit controversial because you get him so late. He kind of starts off meh, but with literally just a few levels, he ends up getting pretty powerful. He catches up really quickly, and it's not like a detriment like somebody like Adam or Arthur, where it's like they're so far behind, it's so hard to get them to level up. It's easy to level up organically with Hanzou, and that's why I have him in my A tier. Next, I'm not going to spend much time on him. He's, I guess, in ways, the mascot of Shining Force, right? Jogurt, the yogurt. He's awful. He's cute, he's funny, you know. His stats are terrible. I think they're 1 across the board. He does 1 all the time. If you kill enemies with him, though, I think enemies drop the Jogurt ring, which you can equip to people and have them look like Jogurt. Jogurt's like a joke character. There's really nothing to say about Jogurt. He's literally a joke character who's cute. He is the worst character in the game. There is no debating it. So, he's at the bottom of my list. He's the D tier, but he is a quintessential F, and he is well below Adam, even. So, we'll leave it at that. Moving on to Kokichi. Again, movement is the name of the game, people. And because of that, I have Kokichi in my B tier. Now, inherently, he's not that great. His stats are okay. I think I found myself boosting up his defense a bit with, you know, whether it be potions or rings. His growth is pretty good, though. His stats are eh, but his growth is pretty decent. Base class growth, HP is normal. Attack and defense has a pretty good curve. After promotion, pretty much normal growth. He also uses lances and spears, so he has the ability to attack from, you know, a space away if he has a spear. He is a secret character, technically. You can miss him. When I streamed Shining Force, I fucking missed him because I completely forgot. He's decent. He's got a movement of 6. Obviously, he flies around. Like, you have to baby him a little bit in the sense of you can't really put him on the front lines because he will die pretty quickly. Especially if you thrust them in too quick, much like a lot of the flyers and people with high movement. You know, their defenses aren't typically great. I personally think he's better than Balbaroy. That's just me. Again, this is based off of just kind of organic growth leveling here. Not spending too much time, not pouring every single resource into somebody. I do have him in front of Balbaroy. Did I call him Balbaroy? I called him Balbaroy for so long, and then I realized it's Balbaroy, but either way. Kokichi's a good, solid B tier character. I had him in my my endgame most recent playthrough. If there is a knock on him, it's definitely his defense. You have to be careful with him. But again, in Shining Force, movement is key. The higher the movement, the better. And the ability to attack from a space away in many different time frames of the game is very valuable. And for me, that suits him on B tier. It puts him just ahead of Balbaroy on my list. You could potentially talk me into putting him at the top of the C tier because of his defense, but I think he's fairly useful. And for that, I have him on the B tier. Next, we're getting into the person that I think is the best character in the game based off of my criteria. And that is Musashi. Musashi I have as number 1, even in front of Teo and Anri. You get him late in the game, which is a knock against him. Level 7, or excuse me, chapter 7. You have to read the note and prompt of him waiting at headquarters. His major knock is his movement is 5, so he's another character, much like Guntz. You'll have to either give him the running pimento or the movement ring. But once you do, you're fucking golden. He starts out strong. He's not weak by any means. The major knock against him is that you get him late and that his movement sucks, but you fix his movement and you are good to go. He does not promote. His stat progression is great. His HP is pretty steady. It starts out pretty high. You know, he's able to tank a few hits here and there, but his attack and defense go up very, very consistently. And once you upgrade his movement, it is very easy to just turn him into a powerhouse. You'll just end up parking people, and you'll be parking right in front of the enemies with Musashi and just hammering away. His attack is nuts. His defense gets really high. He has good HP. There's really nothing to say. For Musashi, he doesn't require much leveling. If you do level him, you will experience tons of dividends. Also, I realize, guys, my face has been shadowed by my microphone a lot in this, and I do apologize. I'm trying to be comfortable. Musashi's just a tank, man. To me, he's the best character in the game. There would be no doubt about it if you got him a little bit earlier. Because you get him so late, and because you need to give him something to enhance his movement, I could certainly see you bumping him down on the S tier. I don't think you can bump him down into the A tier. I think he's that good. You just, literally, again, you park him in front of the tough enemies, you park him in front of the bosses, swing away. Fix his movement, and there's nothing to complain about with Musashi. Straight up S tier, to me, best fucking person in the game. Hands down. Ooh, next we're getting into a bunch of centaurs. We're actually finishing off kind of odd here. So, I have Vankar on my C tier. I only really babied Vankar once. And I'll be honest with you, when I babied him, I think I gave him the power ring, maybe a potion or two. This was many years ago. He ended up being like the second or third best force member. He has a very interesting stat growth, and I find that it's sometimes it's inconsistent. But that particular playthrough, he was beasting. His base class stat growth is kind of like starts out good and then peters off a little bit for HP. His attack stat growth is pretty high for both base class and after promotion. Defense base class is normal. After promotion is also high. So he's definitely one of those characters that he's a bit redundant, and you get him in the first Payao visit. I think you could miss him, actually, because he's like left behind, and I think you have to seek him out. I'm pretty sure that you can miss him. He is good. He does require a little bit of TLC, which is why he's on the C tier for me here on with my criteria. His defense is a little but his stat curves, and if you spend a little bit of time on him, and maybe if you dump a little potion here and there, you know, again, he could attack from a space away with a spear. He's a pretty good knight, or excuse me, a pretty good centaur. Well, technically, yes, he is a knight. His race is a centaur, his class is a knight, and he promotes into a paladin, whatever. I'm not totally great with my terminology here, but they're all in the same realm, right? He could be argued, honestly, as probably the second best, potentially, but for me, I do have May and somebody else in front of him. Actually, I have a couple people in front of him, but yeah, not much else to say about Vankar. Run of the mill, pretty good. If you spend a little bit of time on him, he could be a little bit better than what he is. Next, we have another guy who I've never really figured out how to pronounce his name. Is it Pelle or Pell? I used to call him Pelle, but honestly, I started calling him Pell. I don't know. So Pell, he is a solid B tier force member for me. I have him just behind Zylo, Luke, and Gort. You get Pell after the laser eye battle. Looks like he was about to die, actually, but he ends up surviving. Spoiler alert. So the thing about Pell, again, you know, Centaur, Knight Paladin, has the ability to attack from a space away with a spear. a character that starts out really good, that I typically never give him anything, but I mean, if you want to give him something, you could increase his value pretty well. He's just really strong, and he catches up really fast if he's behind at all. Not really, I guess, as far as being behind. He's just like one of those characters. I'm trying to liken him to somebody. I can't remember the guy's name. Fire Emblem Awakening. You get a character really early in the game. He might be a Pegasus or a Centaur as well. Was it Frederick? Can't remember if I'm remembering this correctly or not. But anyway, he just starts off like a beast. Now the difference between him and the guy from Fire Emblem is the guy from Fire Emblem peters off a lot, where Pelle doesn't really peter off, but I would say he's definitely more of like a in-your-face, really good at the beginning. Although, after promotion, his progression curves are actually pretty good for HP and attack. Defense is about normal. He catches up quickly, he ascends pretty well, and he starts out pretty strong. So technically, if you really break it down, I think Pelle is probably the best Centaur Knight Paladin in the game. With the way that I play, I like him. He's another one of those characters that he starts off pretty good and he gets pretty good pretty quick, that I kind of sometimes ignore him and I'll focus on trying to land killing blows with other people. So maybe I stunt his growth just a little bit. But you know, the proof is in the pudding. The stats are there. To me, he's the best of the bunch out of that class. And yeah, to me, he's a solid B tier. You could probably make a pretty good case to be at the front of the B tier, but to me, he's sort of in the middle. I don't know. I use him from time to time. Sometimes I remove him towards the end of the game for somebody else. But nah, he's really good. I don't know what else to say really about him. All right, 3 more characters left. See if we get this done in an hour and a half. Thanks for sticking around, everybody. We got Earnest, who is on my C tier. If I could put him where he needs to be. He's at the top of my C tier. I will say this, though, about Earnest. I don't use him that often. But, again, I'm trying to look at this objectively. Again, Centaur Knight Paladin has the ability to attack from a square away with a spear. Or two, you know, an extra square away with a spear. Pretty good movement. You meet him somewhat late-ish in the game. Yeah, you get him in the Urn Battle before the Balbazac battle, right? You meet him earlier and then he joins later, kind of thing. He has pretty good curves. His curves are, they like basically starts out pretty quickly, growing his HP, attack, and defense, and pretty much the same after promotion as well. I mean, I don't want to like wax poetic here too much on Earnest. He's a good character. The reason that he's at the top of my C tier, I'm looking at the characters below him. You know, Gong, Bleu, Diane, Lowe. They all require quite a bit of work. Han's kind of pretty weak after a little bit. You know, Ken kind of weak. Amon kind of weak. I find that Earnest is a little bit better at the beginning than Vankar. I think Vankar requires a little bit more of like, I'm going to put some time, put some stat progression stuff into him. I think Earnest inherently is better than Vankar. I don't think that Earnest is better than May or Pelle based off of my criteria. And, you know, I already said my piece on Alef. I think that Earnest is probably a little bit more valuable than Alef. The only reason that, another reason that I have him on my C list is, at this point, I don't want my team to be overrun with, you know, Knight Paladins. I probably already have 2. So I'm not, it's kind of like a preference thing, you know? I don't want too many of them. Sometimes he's on the outside looking in for me in my playthroughs, but he's a good character. You could definitely have him on your end game Shining Force, you know, as a member. And it doesn't really count for the tier list, but he has a pretty cool portrait as well. So we'll leave it at that. 2 characters left, people. 2 left. Let's go. Let's finish strong. This one might be a little controversial as well, but again, I keep saying it based off of my criteria. I don't think it's that controversial, and it's Lyle. Lyle, to me, is another C tier guy. And I actually have him basically in the middle. Alef looks like she's in the middle. My issues with Lyle. So I will say this, Lyle is he's another centaur, but he's essentially an archer, right? He has good movement because he's a centaur, and he has the ability to attack from far away. The issue with Lyle is when you get Lyle, he is very weak, very low defense. That's the main issue, low HP, low defense, so he's easily able to get killed. Granted, he is able to attack from range, so you can be careful with him. I find that Lyle technically is the best of the archers. He's better than Hans, he's better than Diane, it goes without saying, like he clearly is better, but he does require some effort. His defense is super low, his HP is low, you do need to level him up a little bit. He joins the force pretty weak, even based off of my criteria where you're not really grinding, he's still weak when he joins you. He does require a little bit of TLC. You might want to, if you want an archer on your team, you're probably going to want him, especially for the end game. You might want to invest some defense stuff into him, or breads of life, maybe, because of his HP being kind of low. His stat progression is pretty steady across the board. I wouldn't say that he's amazing whatsoever, which is why he lands in my C tier. He is the best archer. He does require effort. If he joined your force at a higher level with higher stats, he would probably be on the B tier. I actually like Lyle. I think Lyle is a cool design. If you do put the work into him a little bit here and there, he actually gets pretty good because obviously he's able to use like the assault shell and the buster shot and shit like that after he's promoted. But he joins so weak, and it is kind of late-ish in the game where some people might start getting a little impatient and just want to kind of work their way through, and at this point you're like, I'm done with my my projects, and that's why I have him on the C list. Again, if you promote him at level 20, completely different story, but you know, where you get him in the game, the level that you get him in the game, and the lack of grinding lands him towards the middle of the C tier for me. And now we're finally here, guys. You stuck with me through an hour and 16 minutes, hopefully. The last force member on the list, and that is Torasu. Who, I talked a little bit of shit on him earlier, but I also, real recognize real, you know what I mean? I did put him on my B list. I almost put him at the top of my C, but you know what? He deserves to be on the B list. I never use him though. I never use him. There's a personal bias here. Just because you get him so late with Alef, you know? The progression levels for his stats, fairly standard. Pretty much average across the board with, you know, the higher MP base class. You get him at level 16, so technically he's already promotable, especially based off of my criteria, where you're probably promoting between level 10 to 15. He's already above that. As far as spells go, he knows heal 1 and 2. Technically learned heal 2 at level 7, which he already is. Detox. Shield at level 12, which I think he knows right away, right? Yeah, level 16. And he also knows Aura right off the bat, so because you're not really like attacking people with your healers, or your mages, but in this instance healers, you might just want to swap out, like if you haven't put too much time into Khris, you might want to swap Khris out for Torasu right away. Or if you want to run 2 healers, you could slot right into the party. The fact that he knows heal 2 and Aura 1 right away, it's great. And he learns Aura 2 at level 20, which is only 4 levels away. So even at the most casual of playthroughs, you probably will know Aura 2 with him. And then if you decide to go balls to the wall with him a little bit, which, I don't know, I mean, that's up to you. He knows Aura 3 at level 24, which isn't that far away either. And he knows Aura 4 at level 28. So on paper, yes, Torasu is technically the best healer in the game. And for that, I do have him on my B tier. But you get him so late that he has no early mid-game use at all, which is part of the reason why Khris is in front of him. With my rankings, I put all my effort into Khris, so she's good enough for me. And I typically never need 2 healers, so if I already have Khris on my team, I'm probably not going to take Torasu. But if you're very, very lazy with your healers, which is very easy to get lazy with them, it is very easy, because you're very rarely going to be killing anybody with them, so you're probably just going to be getting 10 points, 10 points, 10 points of experience here and there each battle with heals. If you're lazy, and you want an immediate upgrade, then you're going to probably plop Torasu right into your party. And with, you know, that line of thinking, you know, could be a little bit higher on this list. You know, he's, again, the best healer on paper by far. I just think where you get Khris in the game, Khris's general growth as a character, I have Khris higher than Torasu. You could totally put Torasu above Khris even with my criteria, but that's just where I have him. He's a B tier guy. Usable. You want him? Not? You know, it's up to you. Anyways, guys, I'm actually fucking exhausted. You guys probably are as well. I want to thank you so much for, you know, sticking with me here through this criteria list, Shining Force 1 character tier list. If you guys agree, let me know. If you guys disagree, let me know. I'd love to talk about it. I love this game, so I'd love to, you know, kind of dive a little bit deeper if you'd like. Don't get toxic. And remember, before you criticize, read over my criteria. I'm not upgrading people at level 20. Every single person on here is not getting every single stat promotion item, or progression item, excuse me. And if you like the video, most importantly, please make sure to like it. Obviously, I already said comment if you'd like to, and if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. Retro gaming channel, primarily nowadays focused on RPGs, but all things retro gaming, from pretty much, I haven't done much Atari stuff, if at all, but Atari all the way up to, I don't know, probably Xbox, PS2, GameCube era. Maybe a little bit of stuff here and there and beyond, you know, when it tickles my fancy. But either way, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video and all the Shining Force content that has been coming out. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you guys soon.